November 5th, 1991. The Atlantic Ocean, 40 miles north of the Canary Islands. Calm water, no storm. A yacht called the Lady Ghislaine was drifting at low speed with no one at the helm. By morning, a body is pulled from the sea. By the following week, 32,000 people discover their retirement savings are gone. The man who took that money was already dead. And no one, not a single auditor, regulator, or government official, had seen it happening. Jan Ludwig Hoch was born in 1923 in a remote Carpathian village where Yiddish was spoken at home and poverty was the norm. The world he knew was erased by Nazi occupation. 7 siblings and both parents were murdered, most in Auschwitz. By age 16, he was a lone survivor, slipping across borders with forged papers and a handful of languages. Czech, Hungarian, German, French, each learned out of necessity. Arrested in Budapest, he escaped again, joining the refugee stream westward. In 1940, he reached Britain, enlisting first in the Czech Legion, then the British Pioneer Corps, and finally the North Staffordshire Regiment. War gave him a new name, first Ivan, then Ian Robert Maxwell, and a new purpose. He served in the Normandy campaign, pushing through France and the Low Countries, always at the front. On the banks of the Elbe in April 1945, Captain Maxwell led a patrol across the river under machine gun fire, silencing enemy positions and capturing prisoners. For this, he was awarded the Military Cross. The citation praised his outstanding leadership and gallantry. Field Marshal Montgomery presented the medal, and the moment was recorded in the London Gazette in January 1946. By the war's end, Maxwell, still in his early 20s, stood decorated, fluent in 9 languages, and already a master at moving between worlds. The trauma of loss and the discipline of command became the foundation for everything that followed. The outsider had become, at least on paper, an insider, but the drive to control his fate would never leave him. Maxwell's post-war ambitions took shape in the world of scientific publishing. In 1951, he secured a 75% stake in Butterworth Springer, a minor house with little international presence. He renamed it Pergamon Press. The business model was simple but ruthless. Acquire the rights to scientific journals, then charge universities and research libraries ever higher subscription fees. By the early 1960s, Pergamon was a fixture in academic circles, with offices in 12 countries and a growing reputation for aggressive expansion. Maxwell's fluency in 9 languages and his Eastern Bloc contacts opened doors in Moscow, Prague, and Warsaw that were closed to his British rivals. Success in publishing brought him into the orbit of the British establishment. In 1964, he was elected Labour Member of Parliament for Buckingham, a position he held for 6 years. Parliament gave Maxwell the public platform he craved, but it also brought scrutiny. His business dealings, always complex, began to attract the attention of regulators. In 1969, the Department of Trade launched an investigation into Pergamon's accounts. The inquiry concluded Maxwell had misrepresented the company's financial position. The official report described him as not a man who could be relied upon to exercise proper stewardship of a publicly quoted company. The censure nearly cost him Pergamon, but Maxwell clawed it back through relentless maneuvering. He emerged from the scandal battered but unbroken, his appetite for control undiminished. The lessons of the episode were clear. Power could be consolidated by blurring the boundaries between public trust and private ambition. In the corridors of Parliament and the boardrooms of London, Maxwell learned how far audacity and opacity could go before the system pushed back. From the mid-1980s, the Mirror Group Pension Fund, once a fortress for the retirement of 32,000 workers, quietly became a liquidity pipeline for Maxwell's empire. The first breach was subtle. In 1985, the fund approved internal loans to private Maxwell companies, sums that would soon reach £100 million. Trustees, many handpicked or cowed by Maxwell's authority, signed off on these transfers, often without demanding proper security or oversight. The fund's assets, meant to be locked away for pensioners, were now treated as a reserve account, available for Maxwell's use at a signature's notice. By 1991, the scale had grown. Pension-owned shares, explicitly marked as belonging to the fund, were pledged as collateral for Maxwell's private bank borrowings. £270 million in shares, originally set aside for workers' futures, now underpinned loans from blue-chip lenders like Goldman Sachs and NatWest. Loan documents and security agreements, drafted in the language of high finance, concealed a simple truth. The pension fund was being used as Maxwell's internal bank. The mechanics were intricate, but the principle was stark. Trustees approved, banks accepted, and auditors looked the other way. This was not a one-off raid, but a system, engineered and maintained. The fund's cash and shares flowed out, sometimes as direct loans, sometimes as collateral, each transaction deepening the dependency of Maxwell's companies on the assets of their own employees. By the spring of 1991, the pattern was unmistakable. The boundary between pension security and corporate risk had been erased. The warning from the Department of Trade in 1969 that Maxwell could not be relied upon for proper stewardship had become prophecy, written in the ledgers of the Mirror Group's vanishing future. 58 companies, each with its own set of accounts, secretaries, and letterheads, form the scaffolding of Maxwell's financial empire. These entities, many registered to the same handful of London addresses, created a labyrinth that few outsiders could navigate. The structure was not accidental. Each company played a part in obscuring where assets began and debts ended, shielding the true movement of pension money behind a wall of paperwork and shifting signatures. Professional gatekeepers, auditors, bankers, and lawyers stood at the intersections. Coopers and Labyrinth Deloitte, the auditors for Mirror Group and its pension funds, signed off on accounts that shifted hundreds of millions in and out of private companies. Investment banks like Goldman Sachs and Samuel Montague arranged loans and share deals, accepting explanations that grew thinner as the years passed. Each advisor had access to fragments of the truth, but none demanded a consolidated view. The Department of Trade's 1969 warning about Maxwell's stewardship echoed in the silence of these professionals, who, for their fees, kept the machinery running. The 1991 Mirror Group flotation, raising £235 million, was the final act of misdirection. The prospectus, reviewed by bankers and lawyers, described a company flush with assets and free of entanglements. In reality, the proceeds never touched the pension funds. Instead, the cash was routed through Maxwell's private companies, used to service old debts and buy time. The prospectus was later described as materially inaccurate and misleading, the product of a system designed to conceal, not to reveal. By the time the collapse came, the complexity that once protected Maxwell's empire had become the evidence of its undoing. The numbers, when finally exposed, staggered even those hardened by city scandals. Administrators revealed a black hole of £460 million missing from the Mirror Group pension funds. For 32,000 pensioners, the sums were not abstract. These were decades of wages, promised security, a future now vanished into the machinery of Maxwell's empire. The audit, led by Coopers and Labyrinth, traced the vanished assets through a maze of dummy accounts and circular loans, each entry a record of betrayal. The government stepped in with £100 million in emergency support, but the relief was partial at best. In the end, pensioners recovered just 51 pence for every pound owed. For many, the loss meant selling homes, postponing retirement, or living on half the income they had planned. The scale of the theft was measured not only in ledgers, but in the lives upended across Britain. The trial of Kevin and Ian Maxwell, alongside financial director Larry Trachtenberg, became the longest fraud case in British legal history, stretching into 1996. The prosecution laid out a web of deception, alleging that Maxwell's sons had conspired to defraud 32,000 pensioners. Defense counsel countered with the portrait of a father who ruled by secrecy, arguing Kevin and Ian had been kept in the dark. After 11 months in court and 11 days of jury deliberation, all three men were acquitted. Yet the verdict brought little closure. The coroner's reports on Robert Maxwell's death left the cause unresolved. Spanish authorities pointed to accidental drowning, possibly triggered by a heart attack, while British pathologists noted inconsistencies that fed speculation. Theories multiplied: accident, suicide, even murder. And rumors of intelligence connections would never be proven or disproven. Maxwell's body was laid to rest on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, an honor attended by Israeli leaders and military chiefs, deepening the mystery. The questions, like the pensioners' losses, remain unresolved. 32,000 futures, mortgaged to a fiction. Today, pension safeguards exist because of Maxwell's engineered betrayal, yet regulatory cracks remain. His death left only questions: suicide, accident, or murder? What's certain is this: trust, once broken at scale, cannot be restored by law. The cost endures. Share your thoughts below.